Cue me. All right, Jane Velez-Mitchell from JaneUnchained.com here to kick off this edition of Vegan World 2026 Online Summit. And we are going to be talking about basically the 7 transitions that need to occur for us to evolve toward a plant-based world. And we are so honored to be talking today with Dr. Sailesh Rao, my personal hero, who is the founder of Vegan World 2026 and climatehealers.org. People watching, you are the key component. He has the methodology, he has the plan, but he needs everybody, all the brightest minds to get involved. That's why you are here. So Dr. Rao, without further ado, can you outline the 7 transitions that need to occur for us to achieve a vegan world by 2026, a deadline you set, because if we do not transition to a plant-based society by that time globally, we will be hitting a point of no return that will basically spark an ecological apocalypse that could wipe out the human species as well.
Correct, yes. So yeah, the deadline is, I call it a lifeline because it is a time by which if we transform our civilization, we actually are on our path to becoming a sustainable, thriving planet with all of us living happily, including the animals. Because right now, the rate at which we're killing wild animals, we are on track to wipe them out almost by 2026. And that's unthinkable, right? So the 7 major transitions or transformations are from speciesism, colonialism, racism, patriarchy, all the isms that are holding us back at the moment, to veganism and radical equality. An idea where animals also have the rights to live comfortably and on this planet, because they are also members of this planet. And of course, once we give animals that right to live comfortably without being harassed by human beings, we cannot be harassing each other either. So this is why you have to have radical equality in human society as part of this transformation. So that's the first major transformation, and that is really the underpinning of Vegan World 2026. And the second is going from diseases and divisions for humanity to health and unity for humanity. Why are we breaking ourselves up into tribes and fighting each other? We don't have to do that. We are just one species, and we are here to do a job, which is to help the planet thrive. So we don't need to be making money off diseases for people and dividing people up and making money off wars and things like that, when we should be promoting health and unity for humanity. Then
Go ahead. If you see me looking down, it's because I'm sharing this video. I urge everyone to share this video. This is key information the entire world needs to hear. Continue on, Dr. Rao.
Yeah, so the next is from destruction and pollution for the planet to remediation and regeneration for the planet. Right now we make money off destruction of the planet, and we make money when we pollute the planet and we don't have to pay for cleaning up the planet. So from that, the normalcy should be that we are remedying what's happening, or what we have done. So removing the pollution that we have caused and regenerating life on the planet. And that should be our normal activity for human beings. Like one of the things that Greta said the other day is that her generation is being asked to suck CO2 out of the air using technologies that barely exist. And I'm saying, no, that those technologies exist. They have been in nature for 250 million years, and they're called forests. Forests suck CO2 out of the air. And so we need to give back land to nature so that we can bring back the forests. And that's what the vegan movement is doing, okay? So that's the third transformation, the third transition. The fourth transition is from death and cruelty to animals to love and kindness for animals. We are here to serve the animals. We are here to help them thrive. We're not here to just kill them off, which is what we are doing. We are raising them by the billions and then killing them unnecessarily. and in the process causing all sorts of diseases and destroying the planet. It's unnecessary to do that. So that's the fourth major transformation. It's going from death and cruelty to animals to love and kindness for animals. And then the fifth, sixth, and seventh have to do with the way we organize ourselves as a society. Today, we have a culture of consumption. Everywhere you look, you're seeing ads for products. You're being told, buy this, buy that. If you don't buy this, you're not going to be happy. So it's a culture of consumption that we have built. And from that, we need to move to a culture of compassion, where we are here to serve animals. We are here to ease their suffering. We are to serve each other and to ease our suffering. So that should be normal, as opposed to consumption being normal. Okay.
Here's my question. This is all great. I love it. I want to do it right now. But how do we get society to transition when even in the face of extraordinary horrors like the swine virus that is wiping out millions and millions and millions of pigs in China, and it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out nature's telling us that factory farming is evil. It's institutionalized cruelty. These animals are kept in such horrible conditions. Now they're dying by the millions, not fed to people, but just what they call culled, a term which I detest because it sort of minimizes what's happening. These animals are brutally killed. Even in the face of that, you have people talking about the United States talking about, well, the problem is there's not enough whey in the feed. And now they're going to send a delegation over to China to try to convince the Chinese to just put more dairy products in their feed, as if that's going to solve it. What about switching to faux meats, which the Chinese people actually have been doing for centuries? Faux meats have existed in China for centuries. I just got back from Taiwan yesterday, and I'm telling you, the faux meats that I experienced there are extraordinary. And some of them taste just like pork. Wouldn't it be the obvious solution for the Chinese government to say, hey, this isn't working. It's horrible for our planet. It's a leading cause of climate change. Our hog herds are being decimated. Let's transition our society over to plant-based. But that obvious solution that's staring right in the mirror, and which apparently President Xi has said he wants to reduce animal consumption in China because of climate change. Wouldn't this be the ideal moment, instead of inviting a delegation of dairy farmers over to pitch dairy for the feed? Wouldn't this be a perfect opportunity to say, you know what, we're making a switch. We're going to subsidize and promote meat alternatives and the faux meats that the Chinese people have been making absolutely delicious food for centuries.
Yeah, this is the problem, because we have a money-driven economy as opposed to a service-driven economy. So any problem, they look at it as, say, how can I make money out of that problem? And when you look at swine flu, for instance, these dairy companies are coming around saying, hey, we can make money off of this if we can convince the Chinese to have more whey in their feed, and claim that that's one way to avoid swine flu, which who knows, right? So it's a money-driven economy that's causing us to do this, and it depends on growth. So because it is a capitalist economy, the industry has to keep growing. And if you suddenly introduce faux meat and everyone is eating just faux meat, the entire economy shrinks, because billions of people, actually 1.5 billion people, are employed just raising animals right now for food.
Well, let me just say this. They've always used jobs as an excuse to perpetuate cruelty. When women wanted to get into the workforce, what was the first thing men said? Oh, no, that's going to throw men out of the workforce. That's terrible. Jobs. Look at all the hardworking men who are going to lose their jobs. Even in the times of slavery, an argument against ending slavery was that, well, an entire economy is based on slavery, and everybody's going to be out of work if there's no slaves. So that has always been an excuse that has been used to keep institutionalized cruelty in place. Is there any way, I just got back from Taiwan, so it gave me a new perspective. While America in fits and starts is making the transition to plant-based, to my horror, I found that as I walked through Taipei, trying to get a cup of coffee because I had very little sleep. There was no soy milk available at any of the coffee shops. And I was like, are you kidding me? You're the people who invented soy milk. It's fabulous, or almond milk or any other milk. And I was just horrified by this. And what it showed me was that we have to think globally, and that while we're making improvements here where people, dairy farmers are in deep, deep trouble, and we can talk a little bit more about that in a second. But now it seems that the Asian world is backtracking on the incredible drink that they invented.
Right. Yeah, because they're all buying into the American model. Our culture of consumption is spreading first. And we need to convince the people of Asia and the rest of the world that they don't have to go through the same process that America went through, which is, eat a lot of animal foods, get really, really sick and really, really obese, and then go vegan, which is what we have been doing in America. And they can leapfrog, just like India leapfrogged the entire landline telephone revolution. They just went straight from talking to each other to cell phones. So they just completely, bypassed the landline revolution. In the same way, we need to convince Asians, you don't have to go through the process of getting really obese and really, really sick and then go vegan. Why don't you go vegan right away? And you can do that right now because you gave us all that technology. You gave us all that, the recipes, the food. So it's about leapfrogging, which is what's happening in the global economy that we are in today, because people are connected now around the world, so they don't have to make the same mistakes that the West made before they get to the right place. So,
Dr. Rowe, I was watching a mockumentary about the internet world and how so many smart people, when the internet first developed, laughed in the faces of geniuses like yourself who are coming up with the internet, and they couldn't even grasp the concept. And a lot of the initial, investment bankers were like, are you kidding me? What is this? Oh, people are going to go online and they're going to shop. Are you kidding me? And it was eerie, the parallels that I see between that and the meat alternatives coming on the market, where they're skyrocketing, but you have these sort of backward thinking newscasters who get up and say, oh yeah, I'd never eat that. And who's going to, they're living in the past, and the parallels were just eerie. Can you address that? And obviously the internet won. Those people were wrong. And the people who lost out and who didn't invest, could have potentially made millions and millions of dollars and didn't. And those who did have the foresight did win. Do you see the parallels?
Exactly the same. It's exactly the same thing happening now. People are underestimating the rate at which the vegan movement is growing and how it's going to take over. They're completely underestimating that. They're thinking, oh, people will never give up meat. We will never give up this because we want to get sick and we want to kill the animals. We want to destroy the planet, and then we will transform. This is not the way things happen. People see, they're connected across the whole world now because of the internet, and they see, hey, they went through this process and they are now eating vegan food and they're getting healthier and healthier. Why should we get sick first and then get there? We can do that directly, right? So for us as a species, we are just changing from eating this to eating that, from consuming this to consuming that. For the planet, it's a matter of life and death. For the animals, it's a matter of life and death. 90%, almost 90% of the wild animals are already dead. So we have no choice but to make this transformation for them, not just for us, for them. And when we do it for others, when we do it for the animals, we will never go back. It becomes something that is part of our identity. When we do it just for our health, we tend to go back because we are saying, oh, I'm feeling better now, so I can eat some, right? But when we do it for multiple reasons, when we do it for animals, or we do it for the planet, or we do it for coming into alignment with who we really are, a spiritual reason, then we'll never go back. So this, again, I think there is also a mindset of scarcity that's pushing us, to saying, oh, you better consume that before it goes away, right? There's a mindset of scarcity that our current system imposes on us. And that's because of the game we are playing, which is what we were discussing yesterday with Jean-Francois. The game of money is a game that promotes scarcity, a mindset of scarcity. From that, we need to create a game, which is a mindset, it gives us a mindset of abundance to begin with. So when we have that transformation from a scarcity to an abundance model, then automatically we start doing the right thing. We start playing the right game. And so that's really, the going from a money-driven economy to a service-driven economy. That's the seventh transformation that needs to happen. So to me, it is about creating a game that automatically makes us do everything that we want to do on the right-hand side of this transformation. So create a game in which the transformation has already happened, and then let people play that game in parallel with the game they're playing now, because we cannot stop playing this game. This is a game in which we are getting food on the table, the money game that we have today, right? So we need to play the other game in parallel, just like we are going vegan in the current system, even though the veganism is the foundation of the new system, right? We are going vegan in the current system, and we are forcing fast food companies to have plant-based options. I mean, they're not doing it because they want to do it. They're doing it because they have no choice.
And I'd like to jump in and ask you about the pushback now out of nowhere. Here's a New York Times headline the other day: eat less red meat, scientists said. Now some believe that was bad advice. And this is something that this article and this study, or this review of studies that was done by this sort of group of doctors who came out of nowhere, right, and basically didn't even dispute the findings and said, but people are never going to stop eating meat. It's an acceptable risk. That's the bottom line. And the American Cancer Society and the American Heart Association and Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine condemned it and said, oh my God. Now, first of all, I wish that the New York Times had done some deep background investigation into whose idea this study was, and is there any connection? I don't know, but I think somebody should check between the individuals who woke up one day and said, let's do this study, or let's review all these studies and come up with a different conclusion, if there's any connection between any of them and the meat industry or big food or big ag. Because I was talking to a nutritionist when I was in Taiwan, and he said they did the same thing in England. When plant-based meats were starting to come up, they came out with this sudden study that basically said, you don't need to do that. And right. So it seems coinkydink, to put it mildly, that when Beyond Meat is the most successful IPO since 2008, when they can't keep this meat alternative products, Impossible Foods, Beyond Burger, and all the others off the shelves. I mean, literally, they're flying off the shelves. They can't keep up with the demand. That suddenly, wow, what a shock. An article comes out saying this, that then is immediately condemned by the American Heart Association and the American Cancer Society and Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And nevertheless, the New York Times puts it on its front page for the entire world to see, even though the World Health Organization has said unequivocally, processed meat is a carcinogen. It causes cancer. They did the same thing, by the way, with cigarettes, getting doctors, for example, to promote cigarettes. What are your thoughts on all of that, Dr. Rao?
Well, the media is the tool, the mouthpiece for the current system. So it's full of lies and marketing, because you see who is advertising in the media. Who is paying for those ads?
Meat, dairy, and pharmaceutical companies.
Exactly. Because the meat and dairy cause the diseases so that the pharmaceutical companies can make money off your diseases. So this is a complete, it's a system in which money drives actions. Money drives the media. So the media is full of lies and marketing. You need to understand that first and foremost. If you want to really get to the truth, you have to look for reliable sources yourself. You have to look at who is funding this, who is behind this, who is behind the New York Times, who is behind NBC, CBS, and see where are they, where are their loyalties, where do their loyalties lie? It's not with us, it's not with the truth. It's with whatever gives them the most money. And so this is why.
The problem, Go ahead.
Yeah,
Continue
this
on.
is why I say the New York Times was quick to put a front page article on this scientific study, so-called scientific study that said red meat is okay. And then they don't write anything about the American Cancer Society or the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine saying that this is bogus, right? They don't have a front page article on that, right? So you see that they are biased right away. You see that they are biased. And unfortunately, all media is biased. You have to really look for sources yourself. And because of the internet, we are getting unbiased sources as well. I mean, the internet is also full of biased sources, but there are unbiased sources available if you want to look for them. And this is making it difficult for the mainstream media to promulgate their stories because there are other stories popping up on the internet that counter what they're saying.
Can't they make, though, just as much money on plant alternatives? Couldn't they make money off of the Beyond Meat and the Impossible Foods? And couldn't the insurance companies make money when people get fitter and healthier and they are suffering fewer diseases? And couldn't all the companies, including the media companies, have more productivity when people aren't going off like Bernie Sanders and getting stent operations because their arteries are clogged with plaque? And plaque comes from cholesterol, and cholesterol is produced by animal products. There's no cholesterol in vegan products.
Yeah. I mean, but the game is that you have to make money in the next quarter. You have to keep growing whatever you have today. You have to keep growing that. That's how the game is played. And so because of that, the pharmaceutical companies are saying, I'm making $1 billion off this diabetes medication. And you're telling me, right now that's going to go away. But eventually you'll make money off the health of people. And they're saying, no, I don't buy that right now. Next quarter, I need to make 1.2 billion from the diabetes medication. You know what I mean? So it's always about growing whatever you have in the game. So the game is designed in such a way that they're stuck trying to grow whatever they have today. And
now,
so
Dr. Rao, we're looking at a potential recession. The stock market has tanked over the last couple of days. I believe it's down today again. So what happens if this system becomes so fraught with problems? I mean, how can you have a tourism industry when it's too hot to walk across the street? I was in Taiwan yesterday, in Taipei. It was so hot. I had a couple of hours before my flight took off, and I had some bags with me, and I was literally like, it's too hot to go to that museum. I don't want to walk those 15 blocks. I literally, well, of course I had my happy cow and I was just going from one vegan place to the next and checking them out. But it was oppressively hot in Taipei, oppressively hot and humid. So the same thing's happening all over the world. How can tourism function? How can we know that productivity declines when it's in the 90s? And then, of course, people go into their air conditioning, which accelerates climate change, which makes it even hotter outside. Right. So what has to happen for this system to change?
Well, this system is in its last legs. This system in which we keep growing our footprint every quarter, every month, has no place to go because it's already too big for this planet. So this is why we have to create a new game and play that game in parallel with the current game, so that eventually, as that game gets bigger and bigger, people just transition to that game. So this is what we need to do over the next 7 years. So over the next 7 years, we have to first create this new game, and then we have to play that game sincerely. And as more and more people play that game, then the system automatically changes over to the new game. And the old game becomes something that is like the horse and buggy, right? We don't really need that anymore here because we have cars. So it's like that. You have to make it.
Let me jump in because people might not understand the concept of a game. Yes, in a sense, the stock market is a game, but how do you convince all these people who, are handling billions of dollars in the economy right now? Oh, stop doing that and doing this. What has to happen? And when you say game, what do you mean? Do you mean a new currency? Do you mean, right. Use a synonym for game, because it's hard for people to grasp the idea of the entire culture changing because people are playing a new game.
Right. It's a new, you can call it a currency system, a new money system. We discussed that yesterday, basically with Jean-Francois. And the idea is that you now start valuing things differently. You say you value treating animals well. That is rewarded. You value regenerating the planet. You value cleaning up the earth. So that is rewarded. In the current game, that's not rewarded. So you are rewarded only when you kill the animal. It's the body of the animal that makes money for people. It's the tusk of the elephant that makes money for people in the current game, right? Or the skin of the leopard that makes money for people. So if you keep playing this game, we shouldn't be surprised that the leopards are dying off, because everyone sees a leopard as a walking $1,000 or an elephant as a walking $1,000 bill, because the elephant has tusks. So we have created a game in which the body and the flesh of animals, body parts and the flesh of animals make money for people. We have created a game in which destroying the planet makes money for people. When you cut down a tree, you make money because you're selling the wood and you're making money off the wood that you cut down and sell.
But I get your concept, but how do we go from that to what you're talking about in real terms? You know, we have 7 years left. So you've got all this, you've got the New York Stock Exchange, you've got NASDAQ, you've got, you know, right, Chicago exchanges. I mean, how does that transition? How do we transition from that to what you're talking about? I'd love to go like this and make it happen, believe you me, but I want to know how to make it happen. I mean, when I started Jane Unchained, my social media news network for animal rights and the vegan lifestyle and the planet, the non-vegans only had one question: how are you going to monetize it? That was the only thing they wanted to know. They didn't really want to know why we were doing it or the problems that we were trying to solve. And I said, how do they monetize the Underground Railroad? And then they would look at me like I was a little kooky. But explain, that's why I made it a nonprofit. Explain
how we do it. Yeah. So this is exactly how you started Jane Unchained. It's exactly the same concept. So we are starting a new game. Okay, just like Jane Unchained was a new game that you started in the media world, where you were saying you're taking on the big media guys, but you're saying I'm only focusing on animal rights, right? And I'm going to do it on social media. So it's very similar. We are asking the new game, or the new currency system is going to give people a sense of abundance, and it's going to reward them when they do acts of kindness to animals, when they do acts of kindness to other people, when they do acts of kindness to the planet. It'll reward them. So this is the new Aquarius game, okay, the new Aquarius currency, okay. And when you play that game, when you play it sincerely, you're still using money in the old system to buy things, but you're saying I'm only going to buy things if my Aquarius account also says I have enough footprint to buy that product. Okay, so an Aquarius game is only going to calculate footprint for vegan products only. So it's a vegan game. It's only vegans can play this game. Okay, so it's only vegan products are allowed. So now your company is to only create vegan products, because just like vegans are forcing McDonald's to have a plant-based option, vegans are then eventually going to force companies to only create vegan products, or at least have vegan products available. So you're slowly changing the economy. So even though billions of dollars are flowing in these transactions that people are doing, all those billions of dollars really represent our wealth. It's we, by ordering products, we are causing those billions of dollars to flow. So by ordering different products, now we are going to cause different products to happen in the current system. So over time, the old system is going to just dissolve into the new, because then people are going to say, why do I have to also look at my dollar account when I have Aquarius money, so I can buy this product? So then people are just going to start just the Aquarius product, the Aquarius currency, so to speak. So this is the idea behind transitioning from the old to the new, because we cannot instantly just change from one currency to another, okay, as a society. as a species, because we have multiple currencies now, and they're all being only banks are allowed to give these currencies out, but no one is forcing us to buy products, right? So all Aquarius does in the beginning is help us determine which products are good, which products are not good for the planet, which products are good for the animals, which products are not good for the animals. So by doing that discrimination for us, it determines what we can buy and what we cannot buy. And it changes our behavior as individuals who are playing this Aquarius game. And as more and more of us play this game, it changes the current system. And it makes the current system become the new system.
Look, I love this. I'm so excited to get involved with it. How is it going to take a crash? Is it going to take like a 1929 stock market crash for this to happen?
Well, the stock market will always crash and then come back, crash and come back. I mean, it's been doing that, right? It is the old game. The old game is when you crash, you actually transfer wealth from the poor to the rich. That's what has been happening. And so now there is this incredible concentration of wealth at the top, and very little wealth in the more and more wealth is being taken away from the majority and given to the minority. And the next crash will do the same thing. It's only going to become more and more untenable to play this game. And so there is no Franklin Delano Roosevelt at the moment who is saying we need to now redistribute everything. Okay, we need to take on the rich people and give money back to the poor. That's not happening today. There is no one like that available. And this needs to happen in the next 7 years. And I don't see anyone on the horizon in the current system that is talking like this. So
how do we get through to the leaders? I mean, how do we get through to the heads of the companies who only care about the next quarter? And I just read an article about this. There were a couple of CEOs who really wanted to do good things, who wanted to consider the environmental impact. One of the heads of an energy company said, we want to go carbon neutral and set a date, and they threw them out. They got rid of them. Right. So, because the board cares about, you're right, the next quarter's profits. And we've seen this time and time again, but then we've also seen how people can be penny wise and pound foolish. The documentary Who Killed the Electric Car shows back in the early 90s. They had an electric car. We know some of the people who had it, some of the vegans, and I believe it was General Motors, correct me if I'm wrong, right, that killed the electric car. They literally took the cars from the people who were fighting with them, wanting to keep the cars, and they destroyed the whole thing because they didn't want to invest the time to make that profitable. So we had to wait another 20 or 30 years to now have the exact same thing, except we could have all been driving electric cars. But when Toyota came in and started doing the Prius, all of a sudden they started getting the market share. I'm on my third Prius. And of course, that's a hybrid electric vehicle, or you can get all electric. So isn't it financially stupid? Because GM ended up basically going in the toilet because they made that short-sighted decision. So wouldn't it be smarter for these companies to realize, I mean, love it or hate it, Amazon lost money for a long time while they just basically ate up the entire globe. And then when they invested enough and waited enough, now, he's the richest man on the planet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but people, tend to look at their short term and say, and the familiar. So it's always it's not the fear of the unknown that people have. It's the fear of the loss of the known. You've been making money this way, and you say, I don't want to change that. I want to grow that more. And it's only a grassroots movement that forces change. Like the grassroots vegan movement has forced change in the food industry. Okay, it is forcing them to change. And so the same way, I see the Aquarius game as a way to change the behavior of the corporations from the bottom up, as opposed to from the top down, because they're not going to do it from the top down. But if we from the bottom up say, well, your product has this packaging, And therefore, it has a higher footprint than this other product that does not have that packaging. And therefore, we are going to promote this other product that has less packaging. Then people are going to say, well, I better get a product that doesn't have this packaging. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my market share, right? So you force them to change their behavior by changing changing the demand from the consumers.
So a couple of things, we've got some comments. Melvin Taylor says, who is behind the money for companies such as Beyond Meat? Can you address the issue that the vegan burgers and fast food restaurants are as unhealthy as animal meat? I'm going to just say it very quickly, Melvin. They're not. That's a lie. Okay. The very fact that they're not meat makes them healthier. They have zero cholesterol. Therefore, they're not going to contribute to heart disease. And since processed meat has officially been determined to be cancer causing by the World Health Organization, they're healthier on that front too. These people who have never questioned the health factor in fast food, okay, for decades, they've allowed fast food to proliferate, never saying a word about how unhealthy it is. Suddenly, they're all concerned about health when a vegan burger comes on the market. That's called bias. That's called trying to skew the whole discussion about meat alternatives. Suddenly, they're talking about health. Do you think McDonald's average meal is healthy? Of course not. So they didn't care about that. They've never said anything about that on their commentaries. No, now when there's a meat alternative company that comes up with an alternative to the fast food industry or a way for the fast food industry to transition to plant-based, suddenly they're talking about health and they don't know what they're talking about. In fact, we hear bad information on the major cable networks all the time. The other day, I heard somebody, I will leave it out which network it was, one of the biggest, say, and tailpipe emissions are the biggest cause of climate change. No, they are not. The UN said years ago in a report called Livestock's Long Shadow that animal agriculture creates more climate change, is responsible for more greenhouse gases than all transportation combined. And yet they don't mention that, and they let some so-called expert get away with talking about tailpipe emissions. So we're just not getting the truth in the media, and it's extraordinarily frustrating. And the thing I want to throw out to you, Dr. Rao, is that you're saying that people are going to make these rational choices. Here's my question about that. People are not rational. They make bad choices all the time. I'm a recovering alcoholic with 24 years of sobriety. Back when I was drinking, I did not make rational choices. I was making self-destructive choices. Every time somebody goes into a fast food restaurant and eats a regular meat meal with the milkshake and the meat, they're making a self-destructive choice. Unlike the Randians and the libertarians who think people operate on their self-interest, unfortunately, we're emotional animals and we operate based on cravings, based on emotional, comfort from our childhood. I mean, it's very, very complex. We don't make rational choices when it comes to what we're buying. And that's one of the reasons we're in the quandary we're in. So how do you get around that?
Yeah, the system itself is promoting these irrational choices. See, the system is designed, it's not giving you the right information. This is why you are making irrational choices. People always, most people think that they're good people. They are good people. They are trying to do good for themselves. Sometimes they know that, what they're eating is not good for them, but they feel like, oh, I can indulge now, but, later on I can remedy what I just did. So, and it's a system that pulls you along in that direction, saying, yeah, indulge yourself. That's where your happiness is. Your happiness is from getting more pleasure, right? Instant pleasure. And of course, you're going to pay for it later, but that's part of the game. Then I'll give you pharmaceuticals so that you can overcome the symptoms of what you just had, right? But you need to give them, this is why we need to create a game in which people are being given correct information, in which we are told the actual footprint of products, actual impact of products, so that they can make rational choices. And where people know that there is no one benefiting from them making choices, meaning this is not a game in which the creators of the game are making money off people playing the game. It has to be a completely open source game where people see that there is no one has this lock on the choices that other people make. No one is making money off of that and getting rich off of that. So when they see that the new game is played correctly and is being played, is about giving people the right information, then they start trusting it more and more. So we need to build that trust in people and then show them that that by making those choices and making those choices correctly, they are helping the planet. They are within their limits, so that we know that if we live like that, the whole planet will be fine. You know?
I think this is a great system. My question is, can we get it done in 7 years? You know, when I was talking to, for example, the people in Taipei about, do you have any soy milk? Or, I mean, obviously there was a language difference too, but I mean, there was less than zero interest in the subject of why dairy isn't good. And the Asian world, which created soy milk and plant-based milks, should be promoting the product that they should proudly, you know, lay ownership to. I felt like, wow, we have our work cut out for us. I know the millennials here in the United States and in Europe are very hip to it. Like, I think they could understand what you're talking about. And there is a huge vegan movement in Asia. I mean, I was at Supreme Master Ching Hai's event. She threw a celebration. There were 8,000 vegans who attended. 8,000. This is the woman who created the Loving Hut restaurant chain with more than 200 vegan restaurants around the world, all scattered all over the world. And she also has Supreme Master TV. And I mentioned you to her and suggested they do a story on you because I think that there would be great commonality there. So I'm not trying to minimize what's happening in the Asian world for veganism. I've never seen so many vegans in one room lined up in my life in a giant hall. But outside of that, in the general culture, there seemed to be, while there were tons of vegan restaurants, tons, like literally 15 in a 1.5 mile radius that I saw. It seems like there's pockets of awakeness here in the United States and in Asia, but then it's surrounded by vast fields of unconsciousness and people who do not care at all. How do we deal with them?
Yeah, people who do not care at all until something comes into their horizon that they care about, whether it is their health or they see the Amazon burning or they see it's a very hot day and they cannot walk out. Something unusual that happens to them and they suddenly wake up. This is how I woke up. I woke up because I saw what happened in the forests of India and I said, this is contrary to what I thought. And so suddenly my mental model was not in alignment with the reality that I saw. So suddenly I woke up and I said, oh, well, I have to be vegan if I want to continue working on climate healers. So and I made the switch instantly. And I see that everyone is going through this process. And as more and more of us, as our pocket of wokeness keeps growing, there are people on the fence looking to us and saying, I have this disconnect, and so can you help me out? And then we can help them out. And this is how the movement grows, right? I think it is exactly the way it should be growing. It is growing fast. It's growing exponentially. And if it suddenly grows too fast, then we won't have the products available for people to switch. So this is why it is happening organically. And I say, have faith that this is happening at the rate at which it's supposed to happen. Just like the internet grew the way it was supposed to grow. In 96, we couldn't have supported, suddenly 1 billion people showing up on the internet, but we could do it in 2003, right? So and it happened. It happened organically. In the same way, I think this is going to happen organically. I see it as inevitable that the vegan world will happen by 2026, and the other side is stuck. They cannot stop it from happening.
Well, they're doing everything they can. I mean,
yeah.
It's unbelievable some of the things that they are doing. And I want to pick up another article that just blew my mind. I apologize. There's some construction here if you hear a little noise. President Donald Trump's agriculture secretary said Tuesday during a stop in Wisconsin, he doesn't know if the family dairy farm can survive as the industry moves toward a factory farm model. U.S. Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue told reporters that it's getting harder for farmers to get by on milking smaller herds. We in America, the big get bigger and the small go out. He said, this is the head of agriculture. Weigh in if you could.
Yeah, I mean, they're all saying, forget the small farms, let's just consolidate and make bigger and bigger farms where we are torturing animals, using machines. And it's unconscionable that we allow this to continue, right? And this is why it is becoming more and more obvious to people that they're participating in a cruel system that is not in alignment with who they really are, which is destroying the Amazon. And again, the Amazon destruction to me was an example of how the growth imperative is pushing us to do things where we are deliberately creating products that we throw away.
I think about it all the time. I wonder, on the flight from Taiwan, they served dinner. Everybody was sleeping. Of course, I ordered a vegan dinner, so nobody died if I didn't eat my dinner. Even though I felt guilty about it, I was like, I can't eat. We're all exhausted. It was a 14-hour flight, but the other people had meat items. Now, I don't know that they keep those dishes and serve it to somebody else. So it's quite possible that all those animals died for nothing and that all that food is thrown out because that flight, virtually nobody ate anything. And it just makes me sick to my stomach. And stuff like that happens constantly all around our world, thoughtlessly, where, people just play games with dead animals, drop frozen turkey, from a plane as a stunt or whatever. You read about it every single day. There is such an unconsciousness. And I'm very hopeful because you say it's happening exactly the way it's supposed to happen. But what's your reaction when you read like this front page article in the New York Times that basically tries to undermine all the research that says eliminating meat from your diet is the best thing you can do for your health? How do you handle that emotionally? Because I think it's difficult for a lot of vegans.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that and I say that's to be expected from the New York Times. So I have stopped looking at mainstream newspapers, mainstream news media, because I think they're all on the take. They're all on the take. They're all, I mean, I went through something in my, during my professional career when my house got burnt. When my house got burnt, I witnessed an academic from the University of Pennsylvania doing something that I thought was unconscionable. I didn't expect scientists to behave like that. Then I realized these scientists are also people. Scientists are also on the take. So they were doing things, and he was cooking up stories about my fire that was contrary to what had happened. And because he was paid by the corporation to find an alternate story for the fire. That's what he was paid for.
Wow.
So he was making up stories. And I said, you're a professor of physics. Well, how could you make up stories like that? Well, that's the way he is. That's what he's paid for. So if he comes up with a story that the corporation was at fault, they won't hire him again. So he's stuck in this system. Mm-hmm. He's stuck in this system in which whoever has the money dictates the story. Okay.
Yeah.
And so whoever has the money, whoever has the most money is determining what kind of story you're being told. And that is contrary to the truth, because it's more about making sure that they have the money. It's not about the truth anymore.
Yeah. Well, one of the hopeful things is that younger people, the millennials, the Gen Zers, are not really tuned into the regular media. Right. You ask a 16-year-old, an 18-year-old, or a 25-year-old, when's the last time they read the New York Times? You're going to get 99% who probably say, I don't. And right. So they get their information off of Instagram, and Instagram is flooded with video of not only great vegan cooking, but also of the horrors of animal agriculture and YouTube and the other platforms. So there's hope there. But I listen, I think that your plan is fantastic. I really would love to hear a little bit more detail about how that transition is going to occur. We have these massive institutions who have all the money, who are extremely powerful, that can do not just advertising, but in many other ways through the media and through other means, condition people to do certain things. Right. So how are we going to change that? I mean, what's it going to take? I asked you before, as the stock market plummets now, is it going to take a depression era style collapse of the financial system? Can you address that again?
Well, it may take that, or it may, I mean, a crash like that is an awakening event for a lot of people. People are going to say, well, now what? Is there another way to do this, right? Because, especially when President Trump is leading the nation and not President Roosevelt, which is another issue, right? So people see that as, if you have a major crash at a time when the right leaders are not there,
yeah,
you can have chaos, right? And people are going to be looking for alternatives. But I don't know how the exact transition is going to happen, but I do know that it's our job to create alternatives for people so that people can get to that and say, I can pick that up and I can work with that. If I know that that's going to create a sustainable planet, I will work with that. Because right now we are being told stories, like the stories that Greta is saying, is that the only way out is to create machines that suck CO2 from the air. And I'm saying, no, there are forests you can create, right? Forests can suck CO2 out of the air. So unless we promote veganism and promote this new game in which you are treated equally, you are part of something larger that's coming together to regenerate the planet, and you're being rewarded for that. Unless we create a game like that, you'll never get to a sustainable situation. You'll never get to a planet that is thriving along with all of humanity thriving.
Do you think the trade war may have unintended consequences of accelerating this transition because people can't buy cheap stuff? As this trade war sinks in, you're seeing consumer spending getting a little shakier, and people are not able to go out and buy the very cheap stuff that they used to get from China. That's it's still there, but it's not there to the extent because of the trade war.
Yeah, the trade war is actually a fake war that they created, and they wanted to really do it so that they can grow the economy, because we are not buying from China, so we have to buy from somewhere else, right? We have to buy from somewhere else. So no, China is producing goods that people are throwing away. We are producing food that China is not buying. So we are producing all this food that China is not buying, and China is now buying from Brazil. So Brazil is now destroying the Amazon to grow that food for China. And meanwhile, our government has paid our farmers $40 billion in subsidies for the food that they grew that no one is buying. So you have now grown the food industry, you've grown the consumer products industry, and at the same time, people are not buying as much. So the supply and demand, there is a big gap now, and there's more supply than demand, and the government is buying the excess supply and throwing it away. That's really what's going on right now. So we have a fake growth that's happening because people have to show growth. If you don't show growth, you get thrown out of the government. You get thrown out of power right now, because that's the system we are in. So they're coming up with this fake growth because there are enough woke people who are not buying things anymore. So we are having an impact already. This is in a way accelerating it, because then people see the Amazon burning and they're saying, oh, I don't want that to happen. And if that's happening because of my meat and dairy consumption, I'm going to cut that down again. So, like Europe cut down their meat consumption by 20% since the Amazon started burning. And that has an impact on people, and that has an impact on the industry. So that's going to just accelerate this fake growth movement.
And that fake growth could lead to that collapse that we're talking about. Look, nobody wants to see that, just like everybody else. You know, I'm in the system in the sense that I have a home and blah, blah, blah. Nobody wants to see a 1929 style depression. But, you know, I'm trying to think of what it would take to transition the system. That's all. I'm just throwing out possibilities because we have a very entrenched system. And the people who run it feel absolutely impervious. They feel, you know, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And they feel that they have pretty much absolute power and they're not planning on giving it up anytime soon.
Right.
And so I don't know what's going to take for this new way of living, these principles that you brought to occur in 7 years. I mean, from speciesism and all sorts of bias based on form, which includes racism, sexism, sexual orientation, et cetera, to equality, from division to unity, from pollution to regeneration, from death and cruelty to animals to love and kindness, from consumption to compassion. That to me is perhaps the hardest because we are a consumer. They call us consumers. That's what they do. We are identified by society as consumers. And so there's this inherent constant pressure to consume. And I see it everywhere. You know, when you get in a plane, you got to walk through the duty-free zone filled with all sorts of stuff before you can get to where you're going. And so you're constantly being seduced by stuff, get stuff. And so I think that's going to be the hardest part, getting people to realize that that stuff, you go to a Costco or you go to one of these big box stores and people are running around with these big carts and it's like they're on a high of consumption. And I'm not going to just point the finger. I've been looking at my own consumption and realizing that, you know, I don't want to have food waste. I don't want to buy things where I'm buying them in such quantity that I can't eat them all. Therefore, some of them go bad. Just really kind of my great niece, who's vegan from birth, 22, the absolute quintessential millennial Gen Zer, said, I only buy vintage. I would suggest you do the same. And I said, okay. I mean, I don't know if I can buy vintage bras and socks, but for clothing, other than that, you know, for your outfits, I'm going to try to buy vintage. I've so far gotten 2 vintage shirts. And so, but I've cut back on buying after she called me out. And so we can all, you know, I don't want to just act like, oh, I'm living like the Buddhist monk. I'm not. So the question is, how do we overcome that craving to consume? That's the big, to me, the big hurdle.
Right. Yeah. So this is what this game is going to allow us to do. It is going to allow us to be cognizant of our consumption and its impact on the planet. So that when we consume, we know what the impact is of our consumption on the planet. So that's the information that's lacking right now in the current system, and that's what we are trying to make available in the game. You know, so the transformation is because, you know, all the power that people have concentrated, that power came from us. It's not that they concentrated it themselves. You know, we gave it to them, right? We are buying from Amazon. This is why Jeff Bezos has all this power. And if you stop buying from Amazon, if you stop buying goods that are bad for us, then everyone who is making those goods and everyone who's selling those goods lose that power. It's the people who are creating the goods that we want who then get that power. So our power is really in our wallet as well. And every time we buy, we are actually giving that power away.
Yes, that's really important. And it's hard and it's a challenge because the way society exists today, I mean, one of the reasons why a lot of people buy from Amazon is you need something, you go out to a store, you waste time, you look around, you don't find exactly what you want. And then you realize online, there's 5,000 iterations of what I might want with exact specifications and let me just get it online. I think we've all had that experience, and I'll cop to it. I've done it because sometimes you need something. And so there's, how do you deal with that? Like the practicality of what you're suggesting?
Yeah, it's I mean, it's a game that we need to play sincerely, and basically what we are saying is, if you don't have enough footprint allowance in your Aquarius account to buy that product, do an act of compassion to get that. So if you do an act of compassion, you increase your flow. So this again encourages acts of compassion. It's about encouraging compassion and reducing consumption. So that's what the game is about, right?
Got it. Wow. Well, Dr. Rao, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. I feel that you offer the solution to the big problem that's facing our planet, which is impending extinction. I was at one of the museums in Taipei that happened to have a giant life-size skeleton of a dinosaur. And I thought of you because you talk about how we are facing the possibility of human extinction if we don't make these changes. And the dinosaur is so large and it's so powerful. And it was such a dominant creature at the time. It was the human of that time because it ran the show. It was biggest and baddest. And yet it's extinct. And I really thought, wow, what are the chances that I stumble in to see this just yesterday and think about if there was a possibility of that thought, the dinosaur would have said, I'm too powerful and big to go extinct. I rule the earth. And yet the dinosaurs obviously did go extinct. And I think that it applies perfectly to where humans are now. We think we're so powerful. You know, on the one hand, we think we're so powerful. On the other hand, we say we're not powerful enough to affect the environment. So we talk out of both sides of our mouths. But I do feel that when extinction becomes very real for people, I pray that they might see another way. And I hope it happens quickly. And I think that your plan is the best plan I've heard. And I hope we get a lot of people on board, like the participants who are watching today, to implement that plan. So my final question to you is, if people are on board with you, which I hope they are, and I certainly am, what precisely can they do to help implement your plan?
Yeah, so we are going to be discussing this plan and working out all the details during the conference that's happening on the 25th to the 27th of this month in Mesa, Arizona. So please try to be part of that conference. Either come to the conference or watch it on Facebook and participate in it so that we can work out the details of this game. And then we are going to go build that game and we are going to then play that game. Okay, so this is it. This is what we are doing this month. And once we get that going, please play the game sincerely and watch it happen and help it happen. Because just like all of us have become vegan over the past, 30, 40 years, and we see the momentum growing for the vegan movement, it is only going to explode exponentially. This is exactly how the internet happened. This is exactly how any big movement has happened. And there is nothing holding it back. It is good for your health. It's good for the planet. It's good for the animals. It's good for everybody. So this is why the movement is growing so fast. And there is no way to stop this movement. There is no going back.
Well, Deborah, is this our allotted time?
This is our allotted time, but we've got a number of questions. So how do you feel about answering some of the questions in the chat?
I'm fine. Sure. I'd love to.
Okay. All right. I'm going to back way up in the chat and go through some of the questions. And if you feel like you've already answered them, then just, if you could just, reiterate that, that's fine. The first one is, how does playing the new game translate to taxes, subsidies, and other mechanisms that are currently available in the economic system?
Yeah, the new game is separate from the current system. So the current system is going to have this taxes and subsidies that are going to try and promote meat eating and things like that. But the new game, simultaneously is going to change the behavior of corporations in the old game, just like the vegan movement changed the behavior of corporations in the old game, right? So the new game is just taking it to another level. It's just looking at not just food, but other products, and then looking at packaging, looking at impact on the planet. So it's about making it more holistic so that we are impacting everything, not just our food habits.
Yeah, and I'm starting to see the picture of this now about how we gradually transition, and it forces the issues on as we're opting out of the current system and moving to a new system. It also answers a big question that I have from time to time with, when I'm going to buy a product, what's behind this, and how do I know if this is really something that is practicing compassion, if I'm contributing to something that's actually contributing to the model of compassion that I so desperately want to be a part of. So I can appreciate having that new system. Now, Jane already answered the question about whether or not the vegan burgers or the new Beyond Meat things were healthy or not. There was a question about the money behind the companies, who's fronting those companies. Do you know who's behind them financially?
I think people who want to make the world a better place. Ethan Brown of Beyond Meat is based here in El Segundo. I did a whole tour of his facility. He's a great guy. He's selling the message better than anybody, frankly, right now to the public, because he's on the business channels like CNBC, talking about the environmental and health benefits of eating plant-based while talking about his Beyond Meat burgers. And yeah, there's big money. Some of the smartest people, and maybe you can address this, Dr. Rao, the tech people in San Francisco are investing in not just the meat alternatives, but also the lab grown meat, which is another factor in this whole transition, because so many people, including the doctors so-called doctors who came up with this report, this questionable report that's been widely condemned, the big minds are starting to see that this is not only where smart money is going, but that the future of our planet depends on us transitioning. Can you address, Dr. Rao, some of the big money in the tech industry up in San Francisco and how they're involved?
Well, they're all involved because they see this as a way to make money. So they're in the old game. And they're saying, oh, I can make money on this as opposed to, any other investment, because it is, as you said, it's the fastest growing IPO, right? It's the most successful IPO in the last 10 years. So people made a lot of money off Beyond Meat because they knew that the demand for it is growing exponentially.
And can I jump in and say that I check it and I look for recommendations and they say very bearish, which I find hilarious. It's the most successful IPO since 2008. And yet the institutional stockbrokers are saying they're very bearish on it, which to me says everything. That kind of says absolutely everything, Dr. Rao.
Right, yeah. So it is, it is, regardless of what the mainstream is trying to do, this movement is growing. So it's very hard for them to stop it. And people are investing because they see money to be made in the old system.
Yeah, so, all right, there's a comment here, and then there's some discussion about it. I seem to believe that the changes must happen in each person through education based on compassion. Would you like to say anything more about that?
Absolutely. The changes happen within each person. It's education based on compassion. It's about not forcing people. It's about showing them them different aspects of the same story so that they can see which one resonates with them and then they change themselves. This is how I changed. I don't want anyone to go through anything different, but I know that during the change, I went through all of those issues of, shame, guilt, grief, everything you have to go through. because we have been doing something that that's contrary to who we really are.
Yes. And then we have to forgive ourselves for that and
Exactly.
just make the changes we can now. So, okay, there's a question about, we now have a new stock called Vegan Index Fund and not too popular so far. Do you know anything about the Vegan Index Fund?
Well, who's saying it's not popular? I mean, the stock market, it started at 25. I think it's down to 24 and change. I'll be transparent. I bought some. And the woman who runs it is super sharp. She's been in the investment world for decades. So she's not somebody who's just coming at it from like some hippy dippy perspective. She's a very smart businesswoman. And I think it's holding up pretty well, given that the market is tanking as badly as it is. Your thoughts, Dr. Rao?
Yeah, and I think it is doing well considering the circumstances. And it is, again, it's an idea. It's a way to focus our energies in a certain direction, which is, promoting only vegan products. It's along the same lines of changing behavior in the current system.
Okay. So there's another question. Is investing in Wall Street perpetuating the current system of domination?
Yeah, the current system is based on domination. It's based on separation. It's based on competition, saying who is better than who. It's based on winners and losers. But that's the only game in town at the moment. Right? That's the game that's being played. So we have to create this new game and start playing that seriously for us to transition out of this.
Let me ask you a question, Dr. Rao. I think that's a really good question, because I think we're all trapped in the new system. I mean, for people who have worked and saved, and what do you do with your funds? I'm sure we could all just give everything away and move to the country and live in a thatched hut. But on a practical level, those who have worked for many years, who have savings, as Sigmund Freud said, we have to have compassion for others, but also have consideration for ourselves. How do you draw the line? And do you keep money, let's say, in a vegan ETF, or try to invest in cruelty-free stocks?
Right. I mean, so far, we have our family funds, we have just kept it as cash so that we tap into it and we are using it for the purpose of growing the vegan movement. So that's what we have been doing with our money. So I don't travel unless I'm going to give a talk. I don't do anything unless it is to grow the movement. So that's the way I have done. I have reconciled my actions with what I want to do with the money we have. And we don't have a whole lot, but we have enough so that we can continue doing this as long as it takes, at least until 2026.
Good answer. Okay.
Okay. There's another question. What is it going to take to get vegan companies subsidized?
Right. So we need to keep pressuring governments and pressuring, these bodies when they come up with lies like this. We need to hold their feet to the fire, and then ask them, why are they subsidizing food for our children that's making them sick? Why aren't the subsidies in alignment with the recommendations from the doctors, right, on what kind of food should be subsidized? So why are we giving food to our indigenous brothers and sisters that is really making them sick? So the government is sending them food that's making them sick. How can we allow this to happen in our name? So we need to hold our politicians' feet to the fire, but it's very difficult because they are so entrenched right now. So simultaneously, we need to build these new institutions and this new game that allow us to do the right thing by people.
I think that, there has to be a major cleaning of house in both parties. I see both parties as part of the problem. Right. You have Elizabeth Warren saying, let's not get distracted by cheeseburgers and plastic straws. Animal agriculture and plastics are two of the leading things destroying our planet. And people love to throw out the word fossil fuels. 9 out of 10 people, the kids who are marching at the climate strike, you ask them define fossil fuels, they wouldn't be able to do it. They don't even know. It's just fossil fuels. So when you get specific and talk about personal accountability, people just immediately want to look the other way. And so I admire the climate strike movement. Don't get me wrong. I'm a huge fan of Greta Thunberg and our documentary, Countdown to Year Zero, which is available on Amazon Prime. Countdown to Year Zero. Watch it. And then people say, well, why are you using Amazon Prime? It's like, we've got to use the platforms that exist to get the word out. Otherwise, there's 7.7 billion humans. We can't be talking to people individually. There's just too many people. We've got to use those platforms. If they invited me on the New York Times to talk about this, or Dr. Rao, I'm sure he would go, because that we have to accept life on life's terms. Those are the megaphones right now. But Elizabeth Warren, the most so-called progressive candidate, just completely dissed the idea of animal agriculture having a role in climate change. We need to clean house on both sides. And yet we have these faux environmentalists using it as a party platform when they're not really, they have a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to their stances.
Right. Yeah. And fortunately, the next generation is really, is tuned out of the mainstream stories. They see through it. They see that this is full of lies, it's full of marketing. And
Rebecca Allen's commented, 2 of the youth speakers at the Capitol in Texas spoke of not focusing on individual actions, but on the government, even going so far as to say something about not needing to go vegan. That's where the climate strike has gone in the wrong direction. They've now veered off. And, there's a question as to whether Greta Thunberg herself, who is vegan and who turned her parents vegan, is being instructed to minimize that conversation and not talk about that so much.
Yeah, and also Extinction Rebellion doesn't want to talk about it. And, this is why we have challenged, I challenged Dr. Gail Bradbrook to a debate on this issue. Because the fundamental lesson of Gandhi is that you cannot get social change without personal change. You cannot get to social change without personal change. So if you're not going to change yourself, don't expect the society to change around you. So that's what he taught. That was his first lesson. That was the whole idea behind the Khadi movement. So why are people who claim to have studied Gandhi not seeing this? Or are they deliberately misreading Gandhi, right? And so I think there is a lot of money behind some of these movements, where suddenly they get access to lots of resources. They get access to speaking at the UN and things like that. And they have to pay the piper, to do that. They have to pay, they have to say certain things and not say other things.
I guess in order to get any voice at all.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
Well, yeah.
That's
And I looked at the video that was produced featuring Greta Thunberg and some other man whose name eludes me right now. It was highly produced. It is a mini movie. That is not something that was done with a cell phone. That was something that cost a lot of money. And whoever supplied those funds probably is setting the agenda. They did not mention animal agriculture, cutting down meat. It was completely absent from the video. So follow the money. And that's why, I love when you say things are changing at the pace they should be, because unlike you, I get worked up when I see things like that. And I have to remember patience. And I don't know, Dr. Rao, how you have the patience and you don't get riled up when you see things like that. I want to learn, and a lot of other animal activists want to learn how you do it. Tell us.
It is the story of the wishing tree that helped me a lot. So the wishing tree story, I've told this story before, where you have to become the observer of your own emotions.
Mhm.
So you have to step back and watch yourself, and then not judge. So you have to become compassionate and detached simultaneously. And then you can be effective at acting, at doing the things that you need to do in the world. Whereas when we get connected and we get attached to our actions, and we're not able to step back, then we feel that we need to react. We become a reactive force as opposed to an active force.
All right, I'm going to work on that. I got a long way to go.
Thank you.
Blood pressure goes way up when I start seeing things and I go, mention it, and they don't. And I'm like, wow. And even now, this is one of the things that I think really has to be addressed. And I wanted to ask you about it. So in the Eating Less Meat article, they talk about climate change, but they minimize the impact. And this is the New York Times. I want to have you respond to it. And I would like you to figure out how we can, they basically say it's responsible for 14 point some percent of
Right.
greenhouse gases, but it's a lot more than that. And why
Right.
is it that we're always going down to the 14% number?
Because that's what the mainstream community wants us to believe. It was cooked up. It's a cooked up number. And I've explained that on our website, climatehealers.org/facts. You can see the timeline of how that 5% number came. And that number says that if the whole world goes vegan, there is no impact. I mean, there is no impact from the forest coming back. They're pretending it's zero. And I'm saying it's not zero. In fact, we now know that every year we're going to sequester about 39 gigatons of CO2 if the whole world goes vegan. And it's starting the first year. It's not like it's going to happen only when the forests are fully grown. No, the first year that the forests start coming back, you're going to sequester 39 gigatons. So for the next 20 years, he's going to sequester about 39 gigatons on the average per year. Okay, so that's what they have calculated.
Dr. Rao, is there any way that you can write an editorial, an opinion piece, and try to get it in the New York Times that lays out? And the one advice I'd give you, don't criticize the New York Times. They're not going to publish something if you start out by saying, you'll look foolish if you don't change this or anything like that. Just lay it out. This was what was written, 14.5%. Here's why that's incorrect. Here are the facts that are not being considered. You're just considering what the animals produce. You're not considering what would happen if we stopped eating them, and lay it out with your source references.
Right.
With your source references. And send it to the New York Times. And if they don't publish it, then start sending it elsewhere. And then we can start talking about, why it's not being published. But at least you would have it on record that you put the information out there with source materials. Because part of the problem is, the biggest part of the problem is that the people in charge are not forced to tell the truth, because they can get away with saying things that are not true because nobody's challenging them. Because I'm not a scientist. I could say, damn, that's not true. But do I have the expertise to lay it out the way you do? No. So once you lay it out in a position paper that has simple concepts, but has the source material maybe highlighted. I know reporters don't have time to go through everything in hundreds of pages. Yellow highlights on the parts that you're stressing in those reports, and then present it, perhaps even legally, as a, that false information is being disseminated. Maybe there's a way to take legal action to say that this information that's being put out in mainstream media is false, that they're underestimating it. But we have to make our argument first, almost like a lawsuit, and lay it out. And that, I don't think, has been done. I think it's one of the most important things that we can do. It's not enough to say, oh, on my website, there's this, that, and the other. We need to lay it out like an opening statement in a court of law, like a lawsuit and say, this is it. And whereas this is it with all these citations, and wherefore you're saying it's this, then therefore you are misleading the public. You need to correct this. But I wouldn't write it that way. I'd say why the 14.5% figure is inaccurate, as
Right.
opposed to accusing them of not telling the truth. I would just lay out, here is the truth, here's why, in a gracious, friendly way. And then with also your bio, the fact that you were instrumental in creating the internet, because once they see who you are, that will also give it credibility. And then put that out there. And then if then it's completely ignored, we go to plan B. That's something I think we should do.
I'd be happy to do that. I mean, as I said, the information is there on our website, but I'll be happy to put it together in a position paper like that and send it to the New York Times.
Yeah, and with your curriculum vitae, and to give you credibility, they get hundreds of thousands of submissions, and
Right.
so it's got to be something that is just boom, and it can even be in response to this eating less red meat. I mean, PCRM, they were quoted in the article, but I mean, it was one tiny quote. Dr. Neil Barnard did a whole live video where he explained why this is completely wrong. And so they could have quoted Dr. Neil Barnard. They failed to do so. But they did quote a doctor who has connections to Cattlemen's Association. What does that tell you?
Right.
So it's just it's a David and Goliath battle, but I think our David is, we're counting on him, Dr. Rao. So yeah,
Thank you.
I would do that. I know you wrote one before, and what my understanding of media is, if there's anything that critiques the media itself, they won't publish it because it makes them look bad. It's more like, this fact is wrong, and here's why. So I look forward to that. And again, if it's not published, then we can issue a news release and we can talk about why it's not published, and we can start a whole campaign, tell the truth. But I think at first you have to give an opportunity for the powers that be, one last opportunity, and explain it, because the entire reason that they're able to get away with not talking about animal agriculture and meat and dairy consumption when they're talking about climate change, which everybody is talking about right now. The reason that MSNBC can do a 3-day or however long climate, extravaganza and not talk about how eating meat and dairy is a leading cause is because of that 14.5 number.
Right.
If the New York Times came out and said, or you published your article where it's like, no, it's not actually 14.5, it's 51%, then that's going to scare off a lot of people who just want to, the Elizabeth Warrens of the world can't get away with saying, let's not be distracted by cheeseburgers. They read the New York Times.
Yeah, in fact, I was thinking of challenging Al Gore on this issue, because he doesn't talk about animal agriculture at all in his presentations. So I thought that if I challenged Al Gore and for a debate on this issue, we could get some publicity around it.
Well, he's minimized it, and I think unfortunately he's not, just like Climate Extinction Rebellion has not taken you up on your offer. I don't think, I'd like to be wrong, I want to be wrong, but I don't think he's going to take you up on your offer, because they just ignore. That's part of the strategy. You don't exist. So I think that some of the more effective campaigns are to lay it out scientifically in a way that people can understand, and then call out the institutions that are not telling the whole story. And maybe we can get backing from other scientists. If we got a panel of scientists who could get together and say, hey, this is right, it's really the leading cause. Would you say, Dr. Rao, that animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change?
Absolutely. It is the leading cause of climate change. In fact, it's more than 51%. The impact is more than 51%.
If we can make that case and have citations and then present it, there is a way we could, put a full page ad in the New York Times. There's things that can be done, but the first thing we have to do is lay it out in a way that is both scientifically accurate with citations and people can understand it. Those are generally two diametrically opposed forces. Either it's the scientists understand it and it's gobbledygook to people, or we spell it out the way PETA very effectively does, in colorful language, but the science is not, they have citations sometimes, but it's not done by scientists. So if you could marry those two in a way, in a non-threatening, just here are the facts, and here's a citation, look at it, it's the leading cause of climate change, and make that case and say it's far above 14.5, it's 52 or 53 or whatever it is, and use all the citations, I believe that would be a game changer. And I believe you could get other large organizations like maybe Greenpeace and the Sierra Club and other groups that are now opening up to the issue of animal agriculture to discuss that. I got a call from Greenpeace for help and I said, what's your position on animal agriculture? And they texted me a good position. I mean, it was pretty impressive given that they've been criticized in the past for not talking about animal agriculture's role. I was pleased that they did get back to me promptly, and they do have a pretty good position paper on it. So I'm looking for it now. I will find it, but the point is that you would get allies if it's spelled out, because part of the problem is communication. We just don't have the message worked out. We just do not have the message worked out. It has to be shown that it's the leading cause of climate change, and it has to be done scientifically with the citations and then delivered and honed in a way that every single presidential candidate, every single news anchor, every single member of every editorial board at every newspaper will see and go, oh my God.
Okay. Let's see. Do we want to make some time for some of these questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think we got somewhere today.
Yeah, definitely.
Part of the dialogue is to come up with strategies. Right. And, Dr. Rao has the information. And as a media person, having been in mainstream media for 40 years, I can see things and see how they operate and see what they need to tell the story. All these people are overworked. All these people are being given 15 different assignments about a myriad of things. If it's not laid out, nice and clear, I can tell you myself as a reporter, somebody sends me something, I read the main page, and then they say, and here's a citation. If it goes to a study that's 100 pages and the actual thing that they want me to read is not highlighted in yellow, I'm not going to have time to read that. So it has to not only have a citation, but that citation has to be highlighted. And that is something that say, here it is on page 34, paragraph 4, boom, there's your information that you need. If you don't deliver it on a silver platter with everything absolutely explained, completely 100% easy to digest, it's not going to get out there. It just won't.
Yeah. No, I'd be happy to do that. Let's get working on that, and then we can send it to the New York Times. If they don't publish it, we can put it in an ad in the New York Times. So let's get it going. Yeah.
I love this.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think this is an amazing conversation, and it's definitely needed. And this isn't one of the questions, and I don't want to take us away from the people who are listening have the questions, but one of the things that I love that you shared, and I don't think you shared it in this interview, Dr. Rao, is about the exponential factor of how veganism is growing currently even without this information making it into the mainstream. And I think part of that is attributed to the fact that our young people know that the mainstream media is full of lies, and they're not listening to it, and they're thinking for themselves, and they're going with their guts, and they're paying attention to a lot of information from other sources that is coming out, and they can feel in themselves, okay, this doesn't feel right for me, and I'm not going to contribute to a world that harms animals and that causes destruction to the planet, and that, so they're making those choices. And as you said, the exponential factor is there. I have to say, there's a voice in my head, and which may be just totally off, but that comes in and says, okay, let's continue to grow with the movement in the way that it's growing, and it will take over, and it is forcing change, and that's beautiful, and it's doing it in a way where it is drawing some pushback, but not to the extent that it will when you go on those debates and go head to head. And so it's like, both are needed.
Both are needed, yeah. And as the movement gets bigger and bigger, we do need the infrastructure around it. We do need the new game, the new currency, the new infrastructure, the new, like what Jean-Francois was discussing yesterday, the new membrane around a vegan community, a vegan world, so that people feel like they're transforming into something different.
By the way, I found the Greenpeace position paper that they sent me. Meat fast facts. The livestock sector accounts for 14% of greenhouse gas emissions worldwide, roughly equivalent to emissions from the transportation sector. So everybody's using that 14% number.
Right.
And that to me is probably the biggest problem and the excuse that people are using to sidestep the issue of personal responsibility with meat consumption. Think about it yourself. If somebody said, to use an analogy, I don't know about you guys, but we all want to reduce, most Americans, right? So if 15% of your excess calories come from cake, you say, oh, that's not so bad, just 15%. I could still eat cake, right? But if they say 60% of your excess calories come from cake, then I go, oh boy, I better stop eating cake. It's that simple. It's that simple. And I use a cake analogy for a reason, because I love cake. And I would like to love it less. All right, continue on.
Okay, so here's a question. How do we prevent people from manipulating the new game for personal profit, as seems to have occurred with many utopian movements such as old school communism? Is the answer no top-down control?
Yes, so it has to be distributed control. So you have to distribute the power. You cannot have concentrations of power, accumulations of power, because that's accumulation of money. It becomes an accumulation of money. So we have to have, this again is one of the conversations that we're going to be having during this seminar, this summit with Shelley Ostroff. And so we're going to be talking about Citizens for a Healthy Earth and how governance happens in the new system. How do we do governance so that we don't have to concentrate power in a few people and have them make all the decisions for us?
Yes.
Oh, it's so timely. I was reading about President Xi. I mean, he's very possibly the most powerful person on earth. And that China's history is many different ethnicities and many different backgrounds, and he's trying to just homogenize it all. And so certain ethnic minorities are being put literally in re-education camps. I mean, the idea of one person having all that power over billions of people, it's mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. And so in some sections of the world, it's getting worse. It's not getting, and that's one of the reasons why the riots are happening in Hong Kong right now, because the people of Hong Kong fear, oh my gosh, we're going to be next. We don't want to be China.
Right.
We don't want to live in a system like that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a question from someone who saw you speaking in Washington. I think this is related to what you just said. So I saw you speak in Washington and remember how everyone responded that they wanted a vegan world, but only 10 people raised their hands when asked if they asked who believes it's possible. How can we get people to trust and envision it happening?
Yeah, so this is why we have to tell the story of how it is already happening and it's inevitable, so that people start believing it can happen. Because only when you believe it can happen that you start working for it. And when you work for it, you make it happen. So it's one of those things, unless, because, to me, changing from, going to a vegan world is a simple step, because it's for each individual making simple changes in their choices, right? And we can all do that, and the planet will be fine, the animals will be fine, and we'll all be fine. So you say, from a technical perspective, going to a vegan world is a no-brainer. It's so easy to happen, right? But people don't think it can happen because they're stuck in the current game, in the current system. And they think that the people with the power in the current system will never let it happen, or some such story they tell themselves. And they forget that the power that the people have, we gave it to them. So we can take it back, and then we can create our own, So it's making people, it's not the technical feasibility of it. It is the emotional feasibility, I would say. People have to believe that. And when you believe it, then you work for it. Just like, the engineers who worked on the moon landing for NASA had to believe that moon landing could happen. Otherwise, they would never even join the team.
Yeah.
Right? So, and they would not work for it. So this is why we need to help people believe that. And this is why I tell the story of exponential growth. This is exactly how it happened in the internet. This is exactly how it happened in the Khadi movement. You see the exponential growth, and you see it happening. And then once people do their own numbers and they get convinced, yeah, it's possible. In 7 years, things have changed a lot in the past 7 years. So therefore, things, if you change it the same way in the next 7 years, we can get there. And when they believe that, then they start working for it. So those numbers are compelling, if you ask me, because in the US, it went up by a factor of 7 between 2014 and 2017. And at that rate, it'll go up by a factor of 343 by 2026, from 2017.
We have to make sure not to listen to the old school pollsters who love to say that the number of vegans hasn't changed. And they just did another poll that they put out. And I'm wondering, are they just calling people on the phone? Because I don't even know anybody who has a hard line anymore.
Right.
Like if you have a hard line, you're probably, look, I'm not a teenager, so I shouldn't, but come on. Are they calling people on their cell phones? Are they texting people? Who are they surveying? These things are so skewed.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Right.
the mainstream media wanting to tell their story. So veganism is not happening. But why is McDonald's testing a plant-based? We don't know, right? Why would they do that if veganism
Why
hasn't?
would they do that?
Right.
Well, guys, I'm going to hop off because in 15 minutes, we're going to be doing another interview with Dr. Rao. And I want to say, I do believe in your vision. When I heard you in Texas, you were the first person who ever said, we are going to have a vegan world. And I was like, yes, finally, somebody said it. And then you said, by when? And we're going to have it by 2026. I was like, yes, somebody's even giving a deadline, because I know personally, being a reporter, nothing gets done until you have a deadline. Okay. Right. If you have a deadline, you get it done. That's a by when. So we have a deadline, and if we don't meet the deadline, we're going extinct. So it's a good motivator. So right. I'm doing everything I can to promote Vegan World 2026, and I will be at the conference. Jane Unchained will be going live. So I urge everybody to be there. Get in your car. We're here in LA. We're getting in a car and we're taking a caravan over there, and we're getting an Airbnb, and it's going to be very fun. Friday night it starts with Zen Nights Party. Friday night, October 25th. And it's a good time, and you're changing the world. So get involved. How do people register again for this conference?
So just go to veganworld2026.org/conference and register.
Do it.
Thank you. See you soon, Jane.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. I agree. That was what motivated me as well when I heard you speak, Dr. Rao, and you gave the plan and the win, and I said, I'm there. I'm there.
And thank you for doing what you're doing, Deborah. I mean, it's amazing to have people around come around and help. And you've been such a great help. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So, and I am honored that you said yes to do this summit, and I'm grateful to have this as a way to contribute. So I appreciate that. Now, just a couple of quick questions. A couple of people are asking about how to find out more about the Aquarius, and
Right.
did you say aquarius.money?
Yeah, that's the website. It has some information about the Aquarius, the idea behind Aquarius. And then we are going to be working out the details during the conference.
Okay, fabulous. And then, so there's some questions about the Vegan Justice League as the first lobby, vegan lobby group.
Right.
I don't know, do you want to say anything about that? You've got an interview in 15 minutes, we just heard. So I don't want to keep you. I can make a note of these questions and we can answer them in the Facebook
see,
group.
there's a lot of effort. I mean, the Vegan Justice League is doing some effort in the current system to protect the new system, to protect veganism, you know, because if you don't protect veganism, they'll try to kill it. This is what they're trying to do. And again, Nation Rising, Vegan Justice League, these are all organizations that are doing protection work. You know, Renee King Sonnen is doing hospice care work. And then we have to do illumination, which is talking about what is wrong with the current system and what can happen with the new system. And finally, we have to do the trailblazing work, which is figuring out the infrastructure and all the collateral that needs to go in the new system, which is the Aquarius currency system, Aquarius money system, and so on, you know. And so all those things have to happen together for us to create a new world, a new system altogether. So that's how system transformations happen. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. So there is
Thank you very much.
One more thing people are asking about the interview in 15 minutes. Is it possible for them to watch that one as well? They're wanting to follow.
Yeah. They can watch it on KFNX or on Facebook live on Jane Unchained.
Okay. So that one will be in Jane Unchained News Network on Facebook Live?
Right.
Okay. All right. Fabulous. So thank you so much, Dr. Rao, for this interview. Thanks to you and thanks to Jane. Thank you so much. And for everybody listening, if you missed parts of this or any of this, the recordings will be available shortly. You can share it from Facebook group, from the Climate Healers Facebook page. Join us tomorrow at the same time, 9 a.m. U.S. Pacific time, with Shelley Ostroff. Dr. Rao mentioned Shelley Ostroff earlier. She's going to be speaking on Citizens for a Healthy Earth. And if you're not able to join live, you're welcome to post your questions ahead of time in the Facebook group or respond to the emails you received about this and send the questions to me, and I'll do my best. We had a ton of questions today, and I greatly appreciate that. I appreciate all the questions and all the participation, and both on Zoom and in the Facebook group. So thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Rao. Thank you to Jane. And we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.